coming, and I've been wanting to talk to you guys about sales because being an entrepreneur myself, I understand the process or understand the frustration of having to get sales going. So a little bit before we get into sales and how it works, let me go over a few things about myself. As Professor Bockenheimer said, I'm a serial entrepreneur. Over the last 35 years, I've had 7 different companies. I'm not going to go through any of them, but I'm hearing a lot of what I went through and hearing your stories. I've worked with about 4,000 entrepreneurs in 13 countries so far to date. Like Professor Bockenheimer said, I'm a coach, I've trained, I've worked with many small businesses, helping them create their business concept all the way to scaling and growing. I've done a lot of teaching. These are some of the organizations I've taught for: Columbia, SUNY Stony Brook, the New York City Fast Track Program, which are for entrepreneurs in New York City that want to start or grow their businesses. Worked with that for 7 years. Many other schools. For the 2nd year now, we're co-hosting the New York Business Plan competition. I'm not going to talk about it much other than to say that we represent the New York City region out of 10 regions in New York State. Last year we had 120 teams apply. We sent 11 of them up to Albany. 7 of them came back with prizes. Prizes range from a couple grand to $100,000, so there's significant amounts of money. We trained them. We worked with 22 New York City campuses or colleges in getting these students up to New York City. So if you're a student with a business idea, you may be interested in this. And like Professor Bockenheimer said, I'm an alumnus, graduating with an MBA here at Pace. So that's me. Let's get into sales and marketing. It doesn't matter what kind of company you have, there are 3 major components of a company. There's marketing and sales is one, second is production, and the third is administration. Marketing and sales is essentially doing, getting your product out there and getting it sold. Sorry, I'm gonna look at my notes to make sure I don't miss anything. So getting customers and promoting rather. And then production is essentially making your product or delivering your service. So most of you guys have, it's about 50-50 products and services in the room, it sounds like. So we're gonna go into some examples of how that works in a minute. And then admin is pretty much everything else. It's answering emails, it's paying bills, it's hiring, firing, training, having staff-related meetings and things like that. So typically entrepreneurs, and putting your entrepreneur hat on, when I ask this question, entrepreneurs throw stuff at me because of the answer. And the question is, of these 3 categories, percentage-wise on an average week, how much time should you spend in marketing and sales? How much time, percentage-wise, should you spend in production and admin? And the answers are all over the map usually with them, but the people that tend to be strong in production or admin are weak in marketing and sales, and that's probably 90% of the people. They do not like marketing, they do not like sales, so they tend to focus their energy and time in production and admin. But the answer is the average entrepreneur, to be successful, however you define success, should spend 60 to 80% of their time in marketing and sales. 60 to 80% as the entrepreneur, as the founder of the company. Why? Because nobody can sell your company like you can sell your company. Nobody can talk about your product or your service or the market better than you can. The entrepreneurs that tend to be the most successful, and there's always exceptions, but the ones that tend to be the most successful are the ones that are their target audience themselves. So being a Cuban American, or having having clothing that you would want to wear, or having an app that you would use, and so on. Just going around, you guys are actually being your customer. If you're a farmer, are you a farmer? No, okay, but you understand farmers, or maybe you have farmers on your team or whatnot. We can talk more about that. But the best entrepreneurs are the ones that are their target customers themselves. So the next question is, well, cool, I get that 60-80% in marketing and sales. How do I get the rest off my plate to focus on that? Well, there are some ways that you can do this. The easiest to get off your plate is admin. That's 10 to 20%, and that's answering emails, paying bills, blah, blah, blah. You can outsource that. You can delegate it. You can bring in alumnus, or you can bring in people to help you and so on for that. Production, we're going to, in the Q&A, feel free to ask me questions about production. Hey, I'm the producer and I design this stuff, and I can't be doing production and selling at the same time. What do I do? I'm happy to discuss that with you guys. One thing that I recommend, what I call sales sprints. Sales sprints are essentially where you chunk your time into 2 days or 3 days a week and say, you know what, for the next 2 hours, I'm going to just crank out sales. For 2 hours, I'm going to call these 10 people. And you break that into, if that's helpful for you. Some people find it's better to focus instead of, you know what, I'll just get to sales, and they just never get to it. The key to doing sales sprints is before the sales sprint, you do the prep work. So, okay, who are those 10 customers or leads I'm going to call? And then in those 2 hours, you do the work. So that doesn't count in the 2 hours. So your action step that I would recommend for this part of the presentation would be to add 1 hour to the sales work you're already doing. So if you're only doing 20 minutes, you add an hour and 20 minutes this week. Or if you're already doing 10 hours, you make it 11 hours, and you just build off of that. Okay, but I want to see you guys add at least 1 hour and then chunk it and figure out what can you take off of your plate and what can you delegate or outsource, or find an intern or something for it. Okay, so let's go to the number one aspect of an entrepreneur, in my opinion. And it is the energy. It's called different things. It's also called passion. Of course it helps when you have a master's. Of course it helps when you have an incredible Rolodex, or you have the money, or you have the customers lined up, or you already have the designs or whatever. That's exceedingly helpful. But without passion or energy, it's not going to happen as an entrepreneur, in my opinion. Look at some of the most successful entrepreneurs you admire and whatnot. They all, I'm willing to bet, have incredible passion or energy for what they do. Okay, so that said, if that's the number one thing, how does that apply in sales? Sales is a very simple formula. It's taking the energy of the passion and converting it into action. Energy into action. What does that mean? Okay, so energy is where, or passion is where you leave somebody touched, moved, and inspired, excited about what you're doing. Action is very simply a request for them to do something about it. We call that various things, from calls to action to, hey, what's your request? And when are these guys doing presentations or pitches? Yeah, next week, right? Yeah, so most presentations that we look at and judge and do for contests, what's missing, the number one thing is missing, is a call to action. I'm not sure if you're doing that in this course, but having a call to action, so depending on who your audience is, let's say they're investors. Call to action is, hey, I would like to talk to you more about our business model to see if it makes sense in your investment portfolio. That's a call to action, example one. If you're in front of potential customers, employees, it doesn't matter. You have a call to action at the end of your pitch. If the customer is, hey, you may want to try my clothing line or whatever, that's a call to action. Okay. The cool thing, the good news about energy versus action, going back up to this slide, the cool thing about this formula is that if, as an entrepreneur, you spend your time where you're good at and where you're passionate about, this becomes a lot easier. Almost effortless. In fact, in my experience, 60 days, 70% of the time, if you're nailing this, the customer, the prospect, is going to take you to action. They're going to say, hey, so how much does it cost to buy your clothing or your clothing? or to get a tailored suit or whatever. They take you there if you're doing this really well. 60 to 70% of the time, they will take you there. The other 20 to 30%, and we're going to talk more about how that works, will be how you deliver it. Now, that's the good news. This is easy to understand. It's not easy to get really, really good at. The passion and energy piece takes some time to learn and get good at. As you're going through it, what I recommend is, so one of the main questions I get on this topic is, how do I know when my target audience, whoever you're delivering it to, is energized, they got it? How do I know that? And how do I know when to flip to action? The answer to that is when you're energized, when you nail it for yourself, you're like, yeah, I nailed that. Okay, good, they got it, most likely. And if you take the next step and go to action and they're not energized, what ends up is trust me, I've seen this before and I've done it myself. You have a room of people just staring at you with glazed over eyes, like, okay, because they're not energized, and here you're talking about landing sales or buying your product or whatever it is. So when that happens, and it will happen, when that happens, you can say, whoops, I got ahead of myself. Let me take a step back, and you go back to the energy piece, and you start talking about that, and you can go back to the action when you feel it's there. Does that make sense? Okay, good. So it takes a little bit of practice and back and forth, and you will get the hang of it. Let's now go into putting all this together into a science. And we call this marketing ball. Sometimes I use marketing and sales synonymously because they're so interrelated. Last week you talked about marketing? Yeah. Okay, so this we're taking the next level. So marketing ball is just like baseball. If you've seen a baseball diamond, you know how this works. Essentially, you start off on home base, and you go around the bases, and you score a run. So first base in business, first base is, this is all about the customer. It's not about you. This is all about you. So going to first base is somebody who doesn't know you from a hole in the wall, a prospect, right? And they're going to now get a flavor of what it's like to be with you or understand what you understand and get your passion and all that energy. The second base is, okay, cool, that was a generic topic that I learned. How does that apply to me in my life? That's second base, still about them, not about you, nothing about you. Third base is where it flips, and we'll talk about this. Third base is where it now is, hey, I get that, but now how does it work with you? How much does it cost? What does it take, and so on. And going from third base to home is closing the contract, signing, and then paying you whatever it is. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. So you're opening the prospect up, and this is all marketing. First base is, again, a topic that is generic. So using the farmers. So it would be, hey, how to pick an organic. I'm dealing with one of my clients has a farm, is helping farmers on Long Island right now, and they want to help the farmers grow more, and then sell more using compost tea is his thing. So he's now doing something generic like, hey, as a farmer, how do you put together a farm that's organically grown without figuring out how to put more chemicals on your field, blah, blah, blah. It's a very generic topic. So farmers that are interested in that, you offer for free, you do a teleseminar, or a workshop, or public speaking, or a newsletter, or something like that. You do it and make it easy for them to learn more about that generic topic. It has nothing to do with your businesses. That's first base. A percentage of these guys are going to go over here, the second base. A percentage of them are going to say, I really like what they talked about with farming or your clothing. So you would say, hey, how to use our all-natural organic clothing and make your own lines. It's very generic in that way. So a percentage of them are going to say, I like that message. I wonder how that applies to me. Well, I'm only doing pants, or I'm only doing men's clothing or something. That's how it applies to them. So taking a generic topic and applying it to them is the next piece. And then if you do the energy piece of the diamond, if you will, correctly, going to third base is where things flip and it becomes a lot easier. So you just nailed it, and people are like, oh my God, yeah, this building this clothing or getting these organic farms together or whatever it is a lot of work. How much does it cost to work with you in your suit company? And you're making tailor-made suits for us, for example. You know, that's them taking you to sales. 60 to 70% of the time, if you do this part well, it's going to go over here. They're going to take you over to the sales piece. I'm going to talk about the other two in a moment. Let me finish the diamond here. Okay, so they're now in an inquiry with you, like, okay, maybe I will work with you, and maybe it will, maybe it makes sense for me to hire you or buy your product or whatever. How much does it cost? How long will it take? What do I need to bring to the table? Blah, blah, blah. That's all part of going from second to third base in sales. And then finally, it's them saying, you know what, only a percentage of the people who go from here go to here, only a percentage of the people there go to here. So the people that are like, after you negotiate the pricing and the timelines and all that, we're going to say, here's my money, let's get started. So that we call a sales cycle, okay? Now, to use two extreme examples of how a sales cycle works, to give you an idea how fast or how slow, how long it takes. So toilet paper. Toilet paper, you go to a supermarket, you make your decision like that. So sales cycle is boom, you don't even know the basics, you're just flying around them. Okay, versus, I don't know, buying an airplane. Airplane, you know, that's long, it's expensive, it takes time, and you know, you're gonna have multiple steps. So the sales cycle is directly correlated to the complexity of the purchase. So, and the complexity of the purchase can be a combination of things like expense, it could be competition, how many clothing competitors do you have, how many other people are doing this in Cuba or not, and so on, or you know, how small your market is or how large it is. All of those things play a role in the sales cycle. There are two more things I want to say about this, and then homework and then Q&A. So one more thing about this is that I said there are three types of salespeople. People in the target audiences, three types of people in the target audience when you're in the sales side of the equation that you need to work on or know about at least. And the first one we already talked about, which are the people that take you to the sale. They're the 60 to 70%. You nailed this side, assuming you nailed this side. So the 60 to 70% are the people that take you to action. The other are the people that always have to be asked. I don't know why, but they just have to be asked. Will you buy my suit? Will you try my app as a student at campus or at the campus if the colleges are the customer? Will you try this for one semester with your students? They just have to be asked for some reason. The third one are the people that no matter what they think have to say no. I don't know why, but they just say, no matter, even if it's a yes for themselves, they just say, nope, sorry, not interested. But how you handle that is what converts them or not. So if they say no, there's two types of no's. No's mean no, absolutely not interested, and there's the no but maybes. So we're looking at the no but maybes. But so in that case, you just kind of dance with them, and everyone's different, and depending on the product that you're selling or service that you're selling, if it's toilet paper versus an airplane, is the kind of dance you do with them. But if there are no but maybe, and it's kind of like a more time-consuming product for them to try out, then you can dance with them and reframe it in a different way to convert their no to a yes or a maybe, and then off you go. There are tons of examples, and in Q&A we can go over that if that's of interest to you. Okay, now we're talking about sales in business, but we use the same business model in your personal lives as well. You do this all the time, all of us. Let's use an analogy. An analogy would be, you're single. You're walking down, no, you're walking in a park and you see this attractive, gorgeous person sitting on a park bench reading a book. Now, if you're like most entrepreneurs, you're gonna say, hey, you wanna go on a date? Now, if you're that person on the park bench, you're gonna look at that and say, that's kind of like pressure. Well, it's the same thing in business. How many networking events have we gone to and said, hi, my name is Stefan and this is what I do for business, and would you be interested in what I do for my business? That's going straight to third base. People are like, thanks. You know, but if you start over here and work your way around the bases, it becomes a lot easier to have a conversation with them. So if you were that person on the park bench and I was attracted to you and I'd sit down on the bench with you, next to you, and you're reading the book and I'm like, I've either read that book or I want to read that book or I've heard about that book, and I start a conversation about the book, like, hey, what do you think of that book? Or hey, what do you think about chapter blah, 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 and you start the dialogue going. And then at some point, you guys change the conversation to whatever, and then you look at your watch and say, oh, I gotta go to class or I gotta get to a meeting. Can we get together for coffee? Now that's going over to the sales cycle in third base. We do this all the time, whether it's asking somebody to go to dinner, to a movie, you know, how we dress, how we put on makeup or not, you know, and on it goes, right? So we're always using this model, personal or business. When you understand how everything moves and how it works, and the psychology, if you will, of your prospect, it makes it so much easier. So when you're an entrepreneur, and I'm going to stop after this, when you're an entrepreneur and you're going through the marketing ball, and it's so much easier for you to, in your head, say, oh, what base are they on? Are they on first base? Well, if they're on first base, you now know what you need to deliver, which is something very generic, not about you or your company, and something that's easy for them to get involved with and sign on to. Oh no, they're on second base. They already have a piece of me. They already have met me, they've read my newsletter or whatever. So on second base is, okay, I gotta start doing things and figuring out, or showing them how what they've been learning through me or not can apply to them in their business or their personal lives. Or no, they're already on second base, they're there, man, we've already had these conversations. Great, well now it's time to turn over to the sales cycle and turn over to the selling part of the sales cycle. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So next is, let me go back. Yeah, there we go. So assuming that formula makes sense, then the key here is if only a percentage of these guys on first base will go to second base, only a percentage go from second base to third, and so on. If that's the case, then it behooves you to make sure you fill first base activities as much as possible, because everything goes from there. If you don't have first base full, you're not going to get second, third, or anybody signing up for as a prospect. So the key is to always fill first base. So for the homework would be come up with 3 to 5 first base activities. So as any business, you can come up with multiple first bases, but come up with 3 to 5 of them that you would do on a regular basis. And then have 1 or 2, maybe 3 second base follow-up activities. So how often are you going to be doing first base activities? I'm making it up. Let's say I'm going to do 1 a week every month. I'm going to do 1 first base every week. Okay, well great. For every 1 that I do, for every 2 first base activities I do, I'm going to do 1 second base activity. Identify that, and that's where you schedule it, but then also identify what they're going to be and then put them in your calendar, because that's how sales happen on a regular basis. And again, when you integrate in the energy and action component into the marketing ball, it becomes so much easier to bring people and close the sales. Okay, Q&A in a second. I'm going to reiterate what these 3 topics were and then open it up to you guys of any questions you might have. So the first thing we went over was allocating your time, which was marketing and sales, production and admin, and percentage of how much to spend in each. And questions might be around how do I allocate more into marketing? I'm not a marketing person or a salesperson. How do I do that? That might be some questions. The other category was energy versus action. How do I get my passion and my energy? And then how do I flip that to action, or how does that process work? Marketing ball is the third area that we covered, which is how do we go around the sales cycle and the diamond, and what are some sample first bases, second base activities, and so on. So, do you guys have any questions?